Honorable Secretary, Member of Legislative Committee, Honorable Satish Babu Chauhan, Vice President, Honorable Amar Singh Pandit, Chief Executive of the College Development Committee, Honorable Advocate Lakshman Rao Manar Sahib, our dynamic principal of the college, Dr. M.N. Sarnaik Sir, Vice Principal Dr. B.T. Pawar, Vice Principal Dr. V.N. Babul Madam, IQAC Coordinator Dr. Vivekananda Jadhav, and our Chief Resource Person, Dr. Prantik Banerjee Sir. Good morning, sir. From
Good morning.
All my colleagues, Dr. Ajay Deshmukh Sir, Ms. Parkhe Ma'am, Dr. Chauhan, and all my colleagues of the senior college and dear participants, hope you are well. I would like to request our principal to welcome the Honorable Resource Person, Dr. Prantik Banerjee. Sir. Meanwhile, I would like to give the schedule of today's session. The first session will be of Dr. Prantik Banerjee from Nagpur, and he will talk on Are you a paper tiger, academia, research and the craft of writing? And then the second session will be by Dr. Nagraj Nawa from Bhagalpur, Karnataka, and he will be deliver his presentation on academic writing. And then the third session will be of valedictory function, and in the valedictory function our colleague and friend Dr. Mustajib Khan, Director, Department of Student Welfare, Dr. Babasaheb Ambedkar Marathwada University, Aurangabad, and he will be the chief guest of the valedictory function. May I request our principal to welcome the resource person, Dr. Prantik Banerjee from Nagpur. May I request our principal to welcome the Chief Resource Person, Dr. Prantik Banerjee from Nagpur, Dr. Madhusudan Sarnaik Sir. Please.
Thank you, Dr. Bandal Sir. Good morning to all and one. I congratulate my colleague fellow, Dr. Bandal Sir, Professor and Head, Department of English, Dr. Ajay Deshmukh, Professor, Department of English, and his colleague for organizing such kind of nice program, a national level program on the academic and research writing. I welcome Dr. Prantik Banerjee from the Islam College, Nagpur, the eminent person in the literature, as well as other eminent source persons, Dr. Nagraj Ji from the University of Horticulture Sciences, Bhagalpur, and eminent personality from Dr. Babasaheb Ambedkar Marathwada University, Dr. Mustajib Khan, Professor and Director of the Student Welfare, Dr. Babasaheb Ambedkar University, in the today's national program and research writing. Dear friends, I also welcome all the dignitaries, research fellows, and my professor colleagues and all teachers in this national level program Dear friends, all are knowing that the research is an important part of the academic. And in this program, the college is taking many efforts for motivating the students for the research as well as interest in bringing up the standards of the research and academic. In this regard, we have organized such kind of program. I heartily again welcome all the delegates, and I'm very much thankful for the English department for inviting me in this program. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. Thank you. Then I would like to give a short note upon the topic of the today's national workshop, academic writing and academic and research writing. Academic writing refers to a style of expression that researchers use to define the intellectual boundaries of their disciplines and their specific areas of expertise. In other words, we can say characteristics of formal tone, use of the third person, clear focus on the program under investigation, and precise word choice. Writing is a skill that required in many contexts throughout life. However, academic writing does many of things that personal writing does not. It has its own set of rules and practices. In short, we can define as complexity, planning, organization, accuracy, hazing, objectivity, precision, formality, and explicitness. Then, what is about research writing? A research report is an outcome of a scientific investigation, and it is a purpose to convey information contained in the report to the reader or the audience. Research, it is a systematic process of critical inquiry leading to a valid proposition and conclusion that common to others. Research is a logical, systematic research for a new and useful information on a particular topic. The purpose of written report is to present the results of your research, but more importantly, to provide a persuasive argument to readers of what you have made. Then I would like to give the short introduction of our chief resource person. I welcome and I also thankful to Dr. Banerjee, Associate Professor, Department of English, Hislop College, Nagpur. Sir had experience of as a vice principal for 3 years. He had been the IQAC coordinator for 10 years. His area of interest are cultural studies, film theory, medical humanities, memory studies, post-colonial studies, trauma theory, gerontology, and disability studies. He also involved in higher education policies, quality assurance frameworks, and curriculum designing. He have designed new PG courses for 3 universities. He is one of the famous speakers at national and international forums, keynote speaker and resource person at several international and national conferences, delivered the annual endowment lectures in the University of Rochester, USA, Loyola College, Chennai, Jyoti Nivas College, Bangalore, the Royal Bhutan University. He is also the member of Board of Studies, Rashtra Sant Tukaroji Maharaj Nagpur University, the member of Board of Studies, Homi Bhabha State University, Mumbai, member of Board of Studies, B.J. Baje College, Mumbai, PhD supervisor for Rashtra Sant Tukaroji Maharaj Nagpur University, examiner for Sant Gadge Baba Amravati University, expert on drafting committee of NCCI National Higher Education Policy, edited the Kakodkar Committee report at National Institute of Technology. He had published 5 books and 8 book chapters and 41 research papers in peer-reviewed journals. Recently, his books are Cultural Studies, The Stakes and Context, Datson's Nagpur, Theory in Praxis, Discourses in Literature and Culture, Datson's Nagpur, Selections of Literature from Romantic to Victorian Age, Orient Black Swan, Mumbai. Then he has participated in many conferences, national and international conferences, and delivered as a resource person, keynote speaker, and chief guest. He had received awards, the Best Fiction Writer in 2021 in the recent the best teacher on campus, Times of India, Nagpur edition, and his recent talks and published papers are Illness as a Metaphor, Viral Modernism, Crisis and Trauma in Art and Literature, Migrating Microbes, Traveling Bodies and Border Communities, Pandemic Narrative, Learning Outcome and Pandemic Realism, Challenges of Teachers, NAC Criterion Fit, How Do We Provide Student Support and Ensure Student Progression During COVID-19 Crisis, is the Internet the New Public Sphere, Democracy and Social Media, Reading Histories and Healing Stories, Trauma in Written Narrative, Whose Baby Is It in Any Way, Marketing Motherhood and Outsourcing Wombs in Narratives of the Natal, Fox Goes to Gandhi, Myth and Making in Mahatma in Popular Culture, No Country of Citizens, Gated Communities, New Borders and Space of Surveillance, Is the Adivasi There in Indian English Fiction, Problems of Subalternity and Representation in Cultural Translation, The Bengalis Provincial Composition Adda is a cultural discourse of worldliness at home. And now today I will request him to deliver his presentation on Are You a Paper Tiger, Academia, Research and the Craft of Writing, Dr. Prantik Banerjee, sir.
Thank you.
Please.
Thank you, Dr. Bandal. And first of all, let me express my gratitude to the principal of the college, Dr. Madhusudan Sarnaik. And also my thanks to Professor Vijay Bandal. I think when Dr. Bandal called me a couple of weeks back, he very pleasantly told me that he had heard me speak in one of the several now online FDP programs last year, I suppose, or maybe this year. And so if I could give the keynote address for this one-day workshop on academic and research writing. Good morning, friends. Good morning, participants. I've been told by Professor Bandal that the number of registrations, in fact, exceed 500 or so. But I can see that there are only 65 people who have joined. And I suppose, right, because many people are busy it's a working day for us and all of us, and many people would be busy taking their classes. But I do believe that when we talk about a workshop on academic and research writing, unfortunately, given the situation that we are in, we are already in the grips of a third wave in Maharashtra, in the state of Maharashtra. And I wish that the word workshop, whenever we think of a workshop, whether it is on research writing or any disciplinary area, a workshop is something that is very difficult to replicate when we do it online. A workshop means to work, not to talk shop, but to work. And so whenever we talk about research writing, it's almost like, it's kind of a surreal feeling that it's been 2 years and workshops are being conducted in this manner in an online mode, which has its own set of problems, which throws its own set of challenges. May I request the participants to mute themselves, please? Thank you. Doing a workshop in an online mode, in a virtual mode, has its set of problems and challenges. I personally prefer that whenever we think of a workshop and not a webinar, I'm talking specifically about a workshop. A workshop has to have handouts. A workshop has to have face-to-face interactions. A workshop has to have dialogue and exchange and interaction. And a workshop, therefore, unconventionally should not be a one-way traffic, but it should allow it should have the space as well as the time for the participants to do some productive and useful and theme-related or subject-related. It should have a subject-related outcome at the end of the workshop, not merely talk takeaway. However, um, like I said, given the unnatural circumstances that we are in for the past 18 months, for the past 2 years or so, well, this is the best that we can do given the situation. Well, friends, as Professor Bandal said, what I'm going to do with you today is titled, Are You a Paper Tiger? Are You a Paper Tiger? Academia, Research, and the Craft of Writing. Let me share my screen. Give me a minute. I hope the host.
Yeah.
Yeah. Sir, I think you've not given, as a host, you've not given me the right to present my screen. The screen button is.
Yeah.
Nope, I am not able to share my screen.
Just a minute.
Sir, I just had a pop-up saying that an error has occurred.
Yeah.
So I think you need to sort out at your end. Yeah, now I can.
Yeah.
Please confirm, is my screen visible to you all?
Yes, sir.
Right.
Yes, sir.
Great. So now that we have our systems in place, this is, this is that little moment of anxiety when we are doing a workshop or whenever we are doing something online these days. So thankfully, the technical support team has done a wonderful job, and now that now that you've assured me that you can see my screen. So this friends is my subject. Are you a paper tiger? Academia, research, and the craft of writing. You know, I like to sort of begin my discussion with you. Professor Bandal said it's a presentation. Well, I don't really think it's a presentation. I'm going to simply talk to you and share some of my experiences as a researcher, who's very keen and passionate about academic writing. And I'd like to begin today's today's discussion with you by taking you back in time to the year 1977. Many of you would not have been even born. I'm told that it's by Professor Bandal that most of the participants for today's FDP, today's workshop on research writing, are young researchers. So I'm sure most of you would not have been born then. The year is 1977, and what you see on your slide is a book titled "How to Write a Thesis." But what is unusual about the book is that it's written by the very, very famous, the illustrious semiotician and postmodernist novelist Umberto Eco. I'm sure many of you would have heard that whenever we think of Umberto Eco, the first word or the first work that comes to our mind is this very famous The Name of the Rose, which is considered to be the classic paradigmatic text of postmodernism. And so the year 1977, almost 3 years before Umberto Eco came out with his groundbreaking novel, The Name of the Rose, and sort of changed the landscape of postmodern fiction. A novel that sort of catapulted him to, international fame. He published a rather funny and unpretentious book, what you see on your screen, How to Write a Thesis. And he wrote this book. He wrote this book primarily for his own fraternity. His fraternity meaning for his fellow teachers as well as his own students. Remember, Umberto Eco was a professor. He was a professor of language and culture studies in the University of Turin in Italy. Now, this book came out in 1977, and it has only recently been translated in English. It finally appeared in 2015. It finally appeared in English. The book has been translated into more than 17 languages, and I mean, how many years it's been? 1977. So despite the 40 years since the publication of the first edition of the book. The book, like I said, when you read the English translation of the book 40 years later in 2015-16, what is remarkable about this book is that it hasn't lost its relevance despite all the things that have changed so far as we think has changed so far as research in English studies, English literary studies is concerned. The book has a valency. The book has the same kind of valency, the same kind of utility or usefulness that it had, that Umberto Eco had sort of designed for his own students and research scholars so many years back, more than 4 decades back. What is this book about? Well, as obviously as the title says, How to Write a Thesis, it's sort of a compendium of practical advice. It's a sort of a handbook or a ready reckoner giving a lot of useful practical tips to young researchers on how to go about writing a thesis. And it has a rather unimaginative but unremarkable titles, such as how to go about choosing the right topic, how to take notes, how to master the final draft of your thesis, etc., etc. So the book, despite being written, almost 40 years back, is, as I said, it has a lot of practical value, and it has meaningful lessons, which I think can equip researchers, writers, teachers such as us for a lifetime outside even the walls of the classroom. This is a book that is enjoyable as well as useful. It has, and it's also a rare thing for a fiction writer as popular and world famous such as Umberto Eco, to also to leave behind a book, which has such practical value for those who are entering into the field of academia, not just into research, but those who for the love of literature, for the love of language, would like to do something, would like to know more about semiotics, to know more about the rigors of research, etc. And I personally, I've been a research guide for several years now, and I personally recommend this book. I make it a mandatory reading to all my research scholars, and because the book has a lot of simple thumb rules, a lot of practical wisdom and thumb rules, such as the one that you see on your slide. How best can one describe one's passion for research? Then Umberto Eco, who says that that your thesis is like your first love. Your thesis is like your first love. It will be difficult to forget. And because he goes on to write that in the end, your thesis will represent your first serious and rigorous academic work, and that is no small thing. Now, what I find, I mean, this might seem to you now like a well-worn phrase or a cliche, but what I find interesting is the comparison that Umberto Eco makes between thesis writing, that is research, hardcore research writing, which we normally tend to think to be a very dry, cut and dry disciplinary act, with romance. Uh, and I think the analogy is not far-fetched at all, because thesis writing also can lead to a lot of heartbreaks, as would your first romance. So when Umberto Eco says that your thesis is like your first love, well, I think that's a very apt comparison. What I also find interesting is when he says that, that your thesis, which means your PhD, will represent your first serious and rigorous academic work. Your first. Now, this is counterintuitive, isn't it? I mean, it goes against the common wisdom. The common perception is that, I mean, at least in India, so far as research in English studies is concerned, you tend to think that once you've labored for 5 years and you have, completed your PhD and you have been awarded the doctoral degree, well, that's the end. That's the end of your research. But contrary to that, counterintuitive as this is, Umberto Eco says that your PhD actually represents your first steps. It's not the end. It's the beginning. It's the beginning of a long journey of serious and rigorous academic work. And this, I think, is something which is very valuable, something that is worth mulling over. Many a times we feel that once we've done our PhDs, once we've got the degree, well, research, well, that's the end of our research. Unless, of course, now with the API and the casting, which makes it mandatory to continue with our research for some more time. But back in my days, I mean, at least until the 1990s, once you did, it was a common habit that once you did your PhD, well, you didn't really bother. For many people, it was the end of the research road or the research journey for them. The book also I recommend only because I said it has a lot of chestnuts, it has a lot of valuable insights, some which are very commonsensical, like when he talks about how to write, what should be your academic style, what should be the style of your research writing, and you look at what the second quote is on your slide. You're not Proust, do not write long sentence. You're not Proust, do not write long sentences. And then there is another equally interesting chestnut he gives us, that you are not E.E. Cummings, mind, grammar, spelling, and punctuation. Now, imagine, I mean, somebody as prolific a writer and as groundbreaking a writer as Umberto Eco, getting the basics right, wanting his own teachers, fellow colleagues, and research scholars to get the basics right, the fundamentals of research writing right. And I'll come to that last bit, where he says mind, grammar, punctuation, and spelling in a little while from now. Do let me know if my slides are working. Slides are moving, rather. Is my slide moving? Are we on the same slide? What is research? The search for the Holy Grail? Is that a yes? What is research? Right. Thank you. Okay. Well, you might again be stumped by what I'm asking you. Most participants in this workshop are already teachers, some very senior teachers perhaps, put in a lot of experience, and most of you would have got your PhDs as well. But then it's always good to re-examine, it's always good to go back and re-examine something as basic as, the question, what is research? Because to go back to something which is basic is to clarify, is to redefine, it is to clarify, and also perhaps to add, modify, or even add something to our definition, or what we think, not forget definition, what we think about research. If research is a journey, if research is a process, then what we think of, what we thought about research, let's say 10 years, when we start 10 or 15 years, as we started on our academic career as teachers in colleges and universities, and what we now think of research, perhaps down the line, does undergo a transformation, does undergo a change. And it's always good to revisit something as basic as the question, what is research, in order to think about, in order to rethink and redefine and clarify in our own minds the possible changes, the different ways in which the very concept of research has changed over the years. Well, when you think of research, and if it takes us back to basics, I can't think of a better way to explain to you what is research than to borrow the words of this very famous American philosopher and literary critic, Kenneth Burke, who, Kenneth Burke describes, he talks about research, and he describes the research paper. He says, to write a research paper, he says, is to sort of engage in a conversation that may stretch hundreds of years back. To do research is to include your voice with any number of other scholarly voices. So when you start on your research, when you write a research paper, you're basically entering into a conversation, and as he says, to a conversation that takes you back even 100 years. And by thinking about the topic, by writing on that subject, you actually are contributing to that conversation by making yourself an informed participant in it. So in doing research, one becomes not just a careful reader of a particular text or a particular movement in question, but a sort of a historian. One becomes a historian of a text life. As researchers, when you take up a particular text, you begin to know when it was born. How do you become a historian of the text? You know, for example, when it was born, when the text was born, who its friends and enemies were, but what it accomplished what the text accomplished for better or worse, and how it has been remembered by those who came after it. So as a researcher, in knowing these things, you contribute to that conversation about the text, and you keep it alive. And not just the text. What is more important is you not only keep the text alive, but you keep the conversation alive, which is probably what Kenneth Burke feels is something far more important when he compares writing research to entering into a conversation, a well-informed, intelligent conversation. So this conversation, really, I mean, if research is, a conversation which is intelligent, which is well-informed, which is engaged, which is forward-moving, then this conversation is not really about the text. It's also about how we read, what we read, how we read, and why we read, and what we value. So this is, this is Kenneth Burke talking about research by comparing it to, as I said, to a conversation. Let me admit, right off the bat, that I love researching and writing papers, especially when things go smooth. What I do realize, and what I wish to share with you all as a fellow researcher, is that there can be no research without sweat, tears, not blood, sweat and tears. Not as Churchill said, that give me blood, sweat, blood, and tears, and I shall give you victory. So leaving aside the bloody part, there can't be really any research without sweat and tears. Tears, why? Well, we know about heartbreaks, don't we? We know about those moments when we are doing our PhDs, which is again, when you do your PhD, you enter into a relationship with your work for nearly 5 years. And frankly speaking, there can't be any research without diligent, disciplined, systematic hard work. So, I say this because, in India, when we think of research and English studies, there is a tendency, I feel, to sort of mystify or valorize the process of research writing. It is to think of research, doing your PhD is to think of it as, as a almost like a search for the Holy Grail. Whereas I feel it is not. Research is not a search for the Holy Grail. We need to, and I do believe that we need to strip research of its sort of mystical garb. We need to think of research more as the product of labor, of industry, of hard work, rather than of genius, especially in research and English studies. Well, there are exceptions when I say we need to think of research more as the output of hard work and industry rather than of genius and brilliance. Well, there are exceptions, admittedly, exceptions all the time. The fact of the matter is that when we think of research and English studies in our country, a majority of research which is taken up by scholars and teachers actually suffer from lack of quality research. Quality, whether it is content, style, or technique or structure. Now, unfortunately, I mean, the research output in India is really marked by poor academic writing. Poor academic writing. I mean, a recent survey on research in India in humanities, not merely in English studies, but in humanities, shows that nearly 72% of writing submitted by researchers sort of get rejected by leading research publications. They're simply not good enough. They're found not good enough. When they're vetted by sort of good research publications with their peer reviews and the experts, they are simply not found good enough. They don't really make the cut. And very often, two common reasons, I mean, this survey cites two common reasons based on their findings. Two common reasons for the rejection of this large percentage of rejection of research writings. One, they say, and both have to do with academic writing. One is what they call ambiguity, and the other is redundancy. These seem to be the fault lines. These seem to be the proverbial flaws in academic writing. Well, ambiguity arises because, just a minute. Yeah, ambiguity arises because, because of researchers writing in a style that is not clear and precise. I mean, an incompetent style. What do we really think when we say, ambiguity arises, ambiguity emerges out of an incompetent style? So an incompetent style is one that is sort of characterized, that is sort of bugged by a lack of logical consistency in the presentation of ideas, poor organization of thoughts, and sometimes, and even errors of grammar and syntax. Worse, much academic writing in India is riddled also with errors of spelling. Unfortunate, but errors of spelling and punctuation. Redundancy, on the other hand, is the result of using superfluous words that make your writing, the researcher's writing, difficult to read and understand. I mean, it's a peculiar phenomena. It's a peculiar thing about Indian research and English studies that, research in English studies is sort of peculiarly afflicted by a pandemic of what you may call incomprehensible jargon. Somehow researchers feel that in order to make their research paper seem heavy or their thesis seem heavy, they need to put their ideas and their arguments in a so-called high style. Whereas not realizing that intellectual pedantry is the bane of good research, and many Indian researchers fall into the trap of being what I call a sesquipedalian. A sesquipedalian, somebody who uses words just for the love of big words. Well, shall I dare to call it a Tharoor, a Shashi Tharoor? A word such as sesquipedalian would be right from the armory of Shashi Tharoor's immense and impressive vocabulary. So there seems to be a sort of a misconception that when we try and write a research, or when we do our thesis writing in English, one needs to make the style a rather, not only the topic is esoteric, but a style which is very obtuse, use of heavy words, heavy jargon, and that nothing could be farther away from the truth. Uh, so- because, as I said, intellectual pedantry is the bane of good research. Just a minute. Please let me know again if my slides are moving.
Yes, sir, we're able to see.
Great. Okay. This is the curious incident, or rather, a pretty controversial incident called the Sokal affair, and this is in research. This is related. What I'm going to tell you is related to the world of academia, our own world, and what it shows. The Sokal affair. What it shows is it's actually an audacious hoax, which tells us a lot about academic style and academic writing, the kind of highfalutin style that many researchers believe should be the hallmark of good research, mistaking content, mistaking the use of a convoluted style for quality research. The Sokal affair I refer to is actually something that happened in the late 1990s, and its name, the so-called Sokal affair, is named after Alan Sokal, a professor of physics at the New York State University. This happened in the 1990s, and remember, Sokal was a professor of physics at the New York State University, and perhaps he was quite fed up and sick to see a lot of writing, especially in humanities and social sciences, which posed to be research oriented, but which basically was a lot of gibberish, a lot of garbage, written or empty, a lot of emptiness, sort of wrapped around or packaged in a very, very highfalutin style. So when he, out of this disgust for the kind of writing, the pedantic writing that he saw, the excessive use of jargon that he saw, which he thought was an increasing malady of research writing in the social sciences, what he did was that he decided to play a trick, and he himself wrote something in an academic jargon. He wrote a paper covering it up glossing it over in academic jargon, filling it with with a lot of critical vocabulary and pet phrases, but actually saying nothing, actually making the paper say nothing. And what Sokal sent this Jabberwocky, this absolute meaningless paper, to Social Text, a highly reputed academic journal, which at that time invited contributions by even leading intellectuals like Edward Said. And well, he sent this Jabberwocky, this gibberish paper, to the editors, and well, surprise, surprise, or rather, no surprise, it got published. And remember, he was a professor of physics who had nothing to do with social sciences. So all he did was to stitch a paper where the most outlandish ideas, putting the most outlandish ideas, clothing them in a nonsensical critical jargon, and getting it published to expose what? I mean, his experiment, his so-called trick or experiment, created quite a furor when it got published, when his paper got published and he came into the open. The thing that you see on your slide is what he said to in an interview. He said that, I decided to try a modest experiment, and would a leading North American journal of cultural studies, meaning Social Text, would it publish an article liberally salted with nonsense if A, it sounded good, and B, it flattered the editor's ideological preconceptions. Now, non-experts, but the kind of language that they spoke, something that nobody really understood. Well, this shows, I cited this example only to show you the dangers or the pitfalls of using a very jargon-ridden, pedantic style. I mean, and also to make you aware that much of, as I've been saying, that one of the common afflictions, one of the common malaise of English research writing in India has been that we sort of deliberately, a young researcher, unfortunately, try the reader to understand or even to present, for the researcher to present his ideas in a clear and concise manner. While, I mean, in my own experience, when I was doing my master's, one of my favorite poems used to be the one that you see on your slide, 13 Ways. The poem is titled 13 Ways of Looking at a Blackbird by this American poet named Wallace Stevens. And, why I'm giving you Wallace Stevens, or why I'm referring to this poem. It has this interesting, the poem is actually, it consists of 13 short separate sections or stanzas. With the first, this is the second stanza, the three things that a young researcher, the three things involving a problem that a young researcher faces. Well, the basic question, what should I choose? Even those of you who have done their PhDs or got their doctorates, I mean, go back in time and imagine your first meeting, or even your first thinking process, the time and the hour when you first thought of doing your research and you told yourself, how do I do? How do I even get started? And the basic problem would have been, like many young researchers, you would have said, oh, what do I choose first? What do I choose first? Author? Should I choose an author? Should I choose an approach? Or should I choose text or texts? And this, friends, is a dilemma that scores and scores of young researchers have faced over ages. A young researcher, many of my own MA students who come to me right after doing their PhDs, bursting, and some of them, a few of them, very overexcited over theory. They come to me like Wallace Stevens's I, the narrator, with three minds. This is something like, sir, I really like feminism or post-colonialism. So which writers should I take up to apply the theory? Or the second person, or the second mindset saying that, sir, I'm super excited about Margaret Atwood after watching The Handmaid's Tale on Netflix. So can I take her up for research? Or the third mindset saying, sir, I'm reading Amitav Ghosh. So which theory can I apply to his works? Get my PhD. This is what one would call a cookie cutter approach, isn't it? Just a minute. I hope we are doing good. I hope I'm audible and all things are okay.
Yes.
I hate this, like I began saying that I hate this idea of doing a workshop online because I really can't see. I sometimes feel like a Kafkaesque fool caught up in looking at the bare screen, or rather the virtual screen. Well, this is what I call, a cookie cutter approach. The mindset I'm talking about, a young researcher who, like Wallace Stevens's narrator, caught up in three minds. Researchers, who tend to pre-decide. They already have a particular theory in mind, a particular theory that they might have got enamored, that they particularly liked while they were doing their master's course. And now they want to apply that particular theory mechanically to whatever text they come across. This is a cookie cutter approach. Doing research is not riding your theoretical hobby horse. It's very common to read a paper where the researcher. I've come across papers where a researcher starts by describing a theorist and his big ideas in, let's say, in a couple of paragraphs, and then returns the body of his paper. In the body of his paper, he returns to a close reading of a particular text in hand, and then ends the paper more or less saying that, that idea from the big theorist I just told you about at the beginning of the paper, well, it applies here. Trust me, reading such a paper is no one's idea of a good time. So when you're using theory, friends, you must use the theorist or his ideas, his insights, as a genuine interlocutor, not as a voiceover. I'll repeat what I said. The way you're using theory in the explication of a particular text in your paper, you've got to use it as a genuine interlocutor, not as a voiceover, not as a voiceover. Because, you have to make it primary rather than secondary. You have to foreground it rather than push it in the background. Oops, just a minute. So you have to foreground it rather than push it to the background, so that you're dealing in your paper you're dealing with that particular theoretical framework or that particular lens, critical lens, in an engaged and interesting manner, and modifying it. You're modifying and contesting the theory even as you're using the theory in order to explicate the text as you go along. So as a researcher, you don't want to be applying a theoretical concept X to a text Y. You would rather want to put both X and Y in a relationship. And when you do this, in a relationship with one another, and when you do this, in applying a text and putting it in a relationship, in not applying a theory, but placing or juxtaposing the text along with the theory, you would have both of them come out on the other side of that relationship changed in a particular way, changed in some way or the other. Not just the text, not just your explication or interpretation of the text, but I mean even the theoretical framework that you are using. That is genuine scholarship. That is genuine research writing. So you're not merely mechanically applying a theory, let us say a post-colonial theory or a feminist theory or a postmodernist theory, to the explication of a text. You are engaging that particular theoretical framework with a text in such a manner that you alter, modify, or you add something substantial or something insightful and innovative, not just to the meaning of the text, but also you are intervening in the theory itself, in that disciplinary approach itself. It's only when you do that, when you place theory, when you bring theory in a relationship with a text and not just mechanically apply, that you are likely to have your aha moment, your eureka moment in research. I've also, often heard complaints that research has become theoretically heavy. I mean, why? Today, when we do research, when we do theory, or whether it is literary theory or culture studies, when we do it in our classrooms, our students groan and moan and say that this is too heavy for us. This is heavy stuff, and generally, even as researchers, there are many researchers who feel that there is too much of critical theory and too many isms in literature studies these days, and all of it, sort of takes away. Critics say that it takes away the fun from reading literature. Yeah, I mean, sometimes jargon, the use of pedantic language, cliches often conceal emptiness of thought. But that said, I don't find this anti-jargon arguments very compelling. I mean, every scholarly field, you will agree with me, that every scholarly field, every subject discipline has its own language, its own specialized vocabulary. I mean, do people Do people complain that they can't read articles published by physicists or economists? I don't think so. Anyway, I mean, whatever your position, whatever your personal take in the jargon was, whether you are anti-jargon or whether you are anti-jargon, in order to succeed as an academic writer, in order to succeed as a researcher, you will have to master the professional discourse. You will have to master the meta language, the use of meta language. Because, one thing is for sure, that if you want your writing to master, your own research writing to pass muster with serious scholars and researchers, if you want your research paper to be published in good research papers, quality research journals, if you want to do research not for your API score, not for your CAS promotion, but genuinely because you are passionately involved in meaningfully contributing to the body of knowledge, the existing body of knowledge, which is research, then you have to read plenty of, theoretical stuff, which might at times seem difficult. After all, you see, reading Lacan, reading Judith Butler, reading Spivak is not an enjoyable pastime, even to the best of scholars. But then doing research is not pastime. Doing research is not pastime. Doing research is not taking a walk in the woods. Right. Let's see where we are. Are you able to see this slide? Are any of these your research topics?
Yes, sir.
Okay. So have you come across theses or research papers which talk about a critical study, a post-colonial study of the fiction of Amitav Ghosh, or topics such as spirituality in Sri Aurobindo's poetry, feminism, a feminist study of the fiction of Shashi Deshpande. And and then at the bottom of your slide, I'm asking this from you participants, spot the difference. You see 4 or 5 other topics there. Representations of masculinity in post-independence Indian novels of the period 1950 and 1960 in English. On the home front, gender disruption and the Great War in the poetry of women writers, archetypal patterns, oil capitalism, climate change and environmental abuse in petrofiction, conflict of identity, class and gender in the Indian graphic novel. Is there any difference between the first bunch of 3 topics on the slide and the second bunch? Please do. I do wish you to make some comments here. And if there is a difference, what is the difference? The second bunch, Jagri Mukherjee. Thank you so much for your, more specific, more focused. But again, when you think it's more specific and more focused, I mean, it's more researchable. It's more research oriented, isn't it? I mean, there is always this possibility. The second bunch, having those 5 topics, does pique our curiosity, even as readers, to be reading such papers. They pique our curiosity because not just because they have catchy titles, and I'll be talking about catchy titles a little while from now, but also because they seem to have what a research problem or a research topic should essentially have keywords, a certain problem area, keywords, and a particular approach that is all spelled out in the title itself, rather than the title in the first bunch, which are so vague and so expansive that they're not really research. They are, you could say, lengthy essays or lengthy articles. Unfortunately, friends, I gave you these 2 sets to compare only because to alert you to the fact that our universities continue to churn out mindless PhDs with topics with titles such as the first bunch of this kind year after year, turning what I say Academia Lucida into Academia Obscura. I mean, when if you go on Shodh Ganga, which is, as you probably know, is a digital repository of all the PhDs that are submitted. And if you were to browse through the list of the PhD topics on Shodh Ganga, many of them continue to have. There are so many theses on Shashi Deshpande or Girish Karnad or diasporic fiction, which really seem to be nothing more than recycling of previous work. I mean, at its worst, such work is plagiarism of earlier bad research, and at its best, it is plagiarism of good research work with a cosmetic makeover. I mean, that is the truth. This is the stark reality. And so this unfortunate trend in English studies research is not, where a researcher, I would say, is not just reinventing the wheel, but he's sort of reinventing the wheel. And in the process, simply adding more trash to the research recycle bin. So what really is, what is a researchable topic? In a few minutes, let me tell you. Okay. When we think of research, what's the most difficult part in writing a research paper? Well, one would say, to answer this question is possibly to look at the elements that constitute a research. Identifying, for example, a research problem, or formulating a hypothesis, reviewing literature, writing and citing. I mean, all of the above. What is so difficult? Well, probably what is so challenging is perhaps all of these. And the best advice that I can give you to a young researcher is always to choose a subject close to your heart. Select a topic you are actually interested in, and not one dictated by your guide. Because remember, I mean, choosing a subject, choosing a topic, you're going to engage with something for the next 5 years, at least minimum of 3 years, maximum 5 years. And as you all know that, once you go through the RRC process and your topic is approved, you may change your chapter schema, you can modify even a lot of things, but you can't really change the topic. You can't change your topic. So you've got to be very careful about selecting your subject and select something that is close to your heart. Remember what Umberto Eco remember Umberto Eco saying that your research is your first love. So treat it with a lot of thought, right? Because you would be romancing. You wouldn't be just romancing. You would be entering into a relationship, like a marriage relationship. You would be entering it for a long, long time. So, what is a research question? So, how does one even go start from scratch to think about a research question or problem? Asking questions, I think the first basic step, and one that may, again, because we make the mistake of not understanding the basics of research, we tend to ignore a few basic steps. And the first valuable step in any kind of research is to ask questions. And not just ask questions, asking the right question is perhaps more important. Because when you ask the right questions, it leads you to the identification of a research problem, and it sets you off in finding answers. I mean, if you're starting from scratch, if you are a researcher and wanting to do your PhD, your first task is to find a research question worth investigating, that will naturally lead to a research problem worth solving. My own personal experience with a researcher of mine, she wanted to work on war literature, a subject that already. So when she approached me, I said, that it's a subject, the one that you want to work on, that is war literature, is a subject which already has libraries and libraries of tomes of research already done on it. But then she seemed to be very keen about doing her research on war literature, and so I goaded her to do a literature review, because that's again one of the most important steps in doing research. And I told her that when you do the research review, come back to me not with what you have found, but what you haven't found. Yeah, you heard me right. I asked this researcher that when you do a literature review, do a literature review over a period of 1 week or 2 weeks, and you come back to me to tell me not what you have found, but what you haven't found. So I sort of goaded her to seek questions, to identify any gap, any research-worthy gap. And so after a couple of weeks, she came back to me with a bunch of questions. And the first question, she said, "Sir, I've gone through a lot of critical material. And the question that came to my mind, something that I didn't find from the literature review, is that when I read a lot on war literature and writings on war literature, what I didn't find was that there weren't women writers at all, women writers writing about the war. So my question, or rather the researcher came up with that question, that why have women writers been excluded from the canon of writings on World War, on the Great War, that is the First World War. So why have female writers or women writers been excluded? Where are they? And then logically, therefore, it led us, both the researcher and me as the guide, led us to consider, the problem of, to take this question as worthy of a critical inquiry, worthy of a critical investigation, because it led us to believe that we had found a research gap. We had found a gap in this particular area. And what was the gap? The absence, simply the absence of women writers. Women writers, not because they were not writing, not that they had not written, but simply the elision of women writers, the absence of women voices from the widely acknowledged canon of World War literature. When we think of World War literature or literature on the Great War, we think of established names such as Sassoon or Wilfred Owen and Edward Thomas, Isaac Rosenberg, etc., etc. So the canon on World War literature is already an established one, and it has been upheld by substantial and well-known critical studies. So when we did a literature review, we looked at, for example, classic critical studies on World War literature, such as Paul Fussell's The Great War and Modern Memory, or Stanley Cooperman's, World War I and the American Novel. I mean, these are established. These are seminal texts and substantial critical work that has already been done on World War literature. But what was the gap that we found is that in the absence of women writing or women's voices, we found that there was a possibility of doing research. There was a gap, which led us to formulate a suitable research problem, a research question, one which had the potential to be developed, to be expanded, to be amplified into a full-length thesis. And so we next proceeded, my research scholar and I, we next proceeded to select the works of three female writers, three women writers of the 20th century, Willa Carter, Edith Wharton, and Virginia Woolf, in whose writings we felt, directly or indirectly, they engaged with the issues of war and used World War I as the backdrop to the narratives. So, here is a simple example from my own experience on how one sets about, how one embarks on research, not by trying to find what is already there in the existing literature available, but what is not there. And that is a crucial step. That is a fundamental step in doing good original research, to identify a gap, a gap which leads to the formulation of a hypothesis, a gap which makes us raise a question and to the formulation of a hypothesis. Because in that sense, give me a minute. Have we moved on to the slide? Research is a 4-step process.
Yes, sir.
So, if you really think about what research is, for all the complexity and the complications that we associate with research, fundamentally, research is a four-step process. Topic X, if you look at it, topic X is topic X is important. A lot of research has been done on it. However, although nevertheless no work has been done on the Y aspect of it, and this paper or this thesis examines the Y aspect. And notice that, this might seem to be a pretty dumbed down version of what research is, but things, as I said, I'm taking you back to basics. And if you really look at this simple four-step process, it actually explains pretty remarkably and very clearly, very lucidly what research is all about. Because step one identifies, topic X is important. Is basically it identifies your research area. Step two is the literature review. A lot of research has been done on it, so that's your literature review. Step three, however, although nevertheless, and I think this is the most important. This is the critical component. The third step is the most critical component of a research paper or a research thesis. Because when you say, however, although nevertheless no work has been done on the Y aspect of it, what it essentially means is you're identifying a gap in the research area that your paper or your thesis aims to fill. So in a sense, there is also, I think, for a young researcher, there's always a confusion between area and topic, because these are two distinct categories and they do mean different things. Take for example, a researcher wanting to do work in the emerging interdisciplinary field of medical humanities. Post-pandemic, or rather, it's very difficult to say post-pandemic. Well, in these pandemic times, there's been a lot of interest generated among researchers about doing work on pandemic literature, which falls within the ambit of the larger interdisciplinary area called medical humanities. Now, medical humanities is interdisciplinary. It is basically a philosophical and literary and cultural approach to recording and interpreting, sort of human experiences of illness, physical or mental, or disabilities, and medical interventions. It also sort of is an engagement with questions of healing, the process of healing and recovery, of ethics and compassion, etc., etc. And so our own personal experience of the pandemic, the COVID-19 crisis, has generated a lot of researchers, a lot of interest in one of my own young scholars is about to register on a topic which belongs to this interdisciplinary area of medical humanities. So medical humanities is an area. It isn't a topic. It isn't an area. Clearly, I mean, you cannot choose to do your thesis on medical humanities because the topic is really too broad and expansive. So the researcher perhaps might like to, zero in, might like to narrow or limit his interest to take up something called illness narratives. Illness narratives as the subject of his research, as the topic of his research. But even then, illness narratives is again too broad an area. It's too broad an area. Why? Because there are any number, within illness narratives, there are so many subgenres of writing. There are different kinds of writing. So I once again took my research scholar, we went through the process of doing a literature review, and we zeroed in on illness memoirs. Now, illness memoirs, which is a specific type of illness narrative. So he is kind of about to register on illness memoir. And to put it simply, what we are trying to do in this very interesting and interdisciplinary area called illness memoir, we're going to look at some of the medical narratives in the form of testimonial narratives, personal medical histories, and starting with examples from, let's say, Siddharth Mukherjee's The Emperor of Maladies, to Atul Gawande's On Being Mortal, stuff like that, works such as that, or Joan Didion on illness. I don't exactly remember the name right now. The year of something. So we sort of narrowed down the focus of our research topic from a research area. We narrowed it down to a research topic. Our aim, therefore, is to look specifically at illness memoirs and as narratives, to examine them as narratives of trauma and memory, as well as narratives of healing and recovery. So this brings me, how are we doing for time? It's 12:20. Do we have some more time?
Yes, sir. Yeah.
Right. Right. So, once you have focused, once you have pushed your thesis, pushed your research journey you started with a research question, then come to a formulation of a hypothesis, which is more like a tentative statement. But in formulating a hypothesis comes another very important step, which is stating your thesis. Stating your thesis or stating your argument, which in a way would be your rationale. I mean, I always, again, take my research scholars to answer three basic questions. What is your research? What is your topic? How are you going to deal with that topic? And so what? I always give them this question, so what? And when you think about it, again, a basic question such as so what? So what? If you're doing an eco-critical, something as vague and general as an eco-critical study of the fiction of Amitav Ghosh, my question to you would be, so what? And in doing so, the minute when you try to answer a question such as so what, you are trying to justify, the answer to that question will actually justify, legitimize, and provide the rationale, your rationale for doing that research. If you can't justify, if you can't answer that question, so what? Well, there's no research. You probably are writing an essay. You probably are writing an expository essay or a descriptive essay. It's an article, not a research paper, please. So just that, so there is a difference between area and topic. There is also the three-step process in asking questions, in answering questions whether you are writing a research paper or writing a thesis. What is your topic? How will you approach this topic? How will you deal with this topic? And the third, very simple question, so what? What is its purpose? And if you're not able to answer these three questions, well, you're not doing research. Christopher Nolan's Memento, the movie Memento, is a film about trauma which operates on two different levels. I like these. I like papers which begin in this manner. Why? Well, I'll say for two reasons. One, it shows a higher skill in academic writing. It shows a higher skill in academic writing. It shows an awareness. Just a minute. To me, it shows an awareness. It shows an awareness of the use of meta language, and I'm now talking specifically of academic writing. Meta language, using a language to say something about the language along with the content. Signposting. When you say this essay reads Milton's poetry in order to argue, or a paper which says Christopher Nolan's Memento is a film made on trauma, which operates on two different levels. I mean, you're making it easy for the reader to follow what is your paper all about. So you're sort of signposting for the reader what is to come in the paper. And that makes your job as well as your job as a writer, as well as, to fulfill its aim. You basically want to write papers for readers to read. You don't want to be writing a paper, a research paper. You don't want to be writing a thesis which is read only by your research guide, your supervisor, the 3 examiners, and maybe a bunch of your own department colleagues whom you have bribed or whom you have treated to go through your paper, to do the laborious job of going through your paper. You want your paper to be read. If you're genuinely interested, if you genuinely genuinely think and are confident that your paper is a quality paper, and you want it to be disseminated, you want it to be out there, put it out there so that there can be more number of citations. Which has a practical value, which is of practical value because it gets you more API score. So it isn't just research in the abstract, it has practical gains as well. So the key really is that you need to write your research in such a way that you make it reader-centric, reader-friendly. You're not writing only to a very specialized or minority group of your supervisor, your examiner, and maybe to, like I said, a bunch of colleagues whom you have to bribe in order to read. And basically, therefore, when you start out a paper like this, signposting for the reader what the paper is all about, you're also stating that it's not just a summary. What you're going to present is not a summary or a synopsis of previous work done. Your thesis, you are actually stating your thesis. Basically the what of your paper. And stating your thesis, making a statement about your thesis, putting it out there is the core of all good research writing. For a research paper, the cardinal rule is that you have to have an argument. It's not enough to describe or summarize a text. We are looking here for a thesis statement that someone might take issue with. Yeah, something. Your research statement, your thesis statement should be something that is arguable, that is debatable, that actually that is sometimes good only when it raises hackles, when it raises people's temper sometimes. So it's not to be provocative only for provocation, for the sake of provocation, but it must be juicy enough, it must be debatable enough to invite counter statements. Because research is not just observation, it's not just a summary or a synopsis of previously established facts. If you're placing an argument, the next step is, if it is a what, then you got to support it by evidence, and it has to be clearly articulated. So your thesis statement in a research paper, you have to have a thesis statement, and you should put it out right in the beginning of the paper, because your thesis statement is basically what your paper is all about. Are we doing okay so far?
Yeah.
Right.
Okay, sir.
Right. Thank you. So here, so criteria, the next step would be, after you've begun your research journey with asking a research question, after you've formulated formulated a hypothesis, after you've zoomed in to a thesis argument, to stating a thesis or stating an argument or stating a position, finally, you come to what really is the criteria of a good research problem, or what is the yardstick by which you're going to measure the relevance or the appropriateness or the suitability of your thesis or your problem. I mean, again, a good research problem or a good thesis is something that is novel, something that is original, something that is interesting, and something that is relevant. I mean, going back to Shakespeare to do a research on Shakespeare or a Thomas Hardy or to a Jane Austen these days is is to trip and fall, because so much, unless you are a Stephen Greenblatt, you really shouldn't be going back to a Shakespeare. Because so much has already been done that you probably exhaust. And although research on Shakespeare still continues to invite and attract a lot of research every year. But I unless you are supremely confident and you've done a lot of work already, I would suggest that when you think of a research paper or a research or a PhD thesis, think about what's happening at hand, something that is relatable to your everyday situation. So what could be an everyday situation? For example, I mean, didn't the recent news of another hike in petrol and diesel prices spoil your morning cup of tea? What's that got to do with research? Well, maybe, once you think about petrol prices, probably it might get you started to think that, that to think about oil is not just to think about automobiles, it's not just to think about your SUV, your dream SUV, or your derricks, or your spectacular oil spills or barrel prices. It is basically to know that even the computer or the phone that on which you and I are connected today is made out of material from oil, which perhaps might lead you to think and read up to believe that our modern culture, the one that soaks us, fuels us, is a hydrocarbon culture. And as a researcher, if you're alert to these little things, everyday things, like, as I said, every time you are at a petrol station, at a petrol pump, and you fuel up your tank and you pay, and you say, the petrol prices have shot through the roof. If you say so, well, it's interesting to think how you could combine, how the thing that pinches your pocket might actually lead you to introduce to you an area which is interdisciplinary, into an area which is called energy humanities. We talked about, a few minutes earlier, I spoke about medical humanities. Well, to think about energy humanities, again, an interdisciplinary, a rich, inviting interdisciplinary field of studies called energy humanities, because, like I said, modern culture is a hydrocarbon culture. And so, to relate your research or what you propose to do with your own circumstances, with your own everyday reality, is to, for example, examine if there are in any ways literature related to energy sources. Can energy humanities become the hot topic, the hot area for your research? So it is to provoke you to think that, what you see on your slide, is oil simply a material resource, or does it possess a cultural capital? Notice again that you are beginning to embark on a new area, probably an unknown area, with a question. Simply like, or take the second question, what happens when we rethink literary timelines not by ages? The conventional way of reading the history of literature is either we slot them in terms of period or timelines, such as 18th century literature, 19th century, 20th century, or in terms of the history of ideas, the Romantic Age, Romanticism, modernism, postmodernism, etc. But it would be interesting if energy is something that, or simply the price that you paid for filling up your vehicle, for filling up your petrol, provokes you to go back to literature and say, hey, are there oil narratives? Are there energy narratives here? Because, you'll be surprised that it changes our own perception about how we read literature, or how we actually think about the chronology of literature. Because then, take, for example, to think about Victorian literature, you can't possibly think of 19th century Victorian literature that is even, Dickens, for example. You can't think of Dickens without thinking about tallow. You can't think of D.H. Lawrence without thinking of coal mines, the collieries and coal mines, can you? You can't think of a modern classic such as The Road by Cormac McCarthy without thinking about thinking about an apocalyptic planet because of energy crisis. So even energy, therefore, or oil, for example, would lead you to bring up research, would lead you to bring up questions that could push you to do research in these new domains, these new interdisciplinary domains. And so one of my students is doing research on precisely, using these kind of questions to to do a research on petrofiction. Petrofiction. Incidentally, petrofiction is the label petrofiction was given by our own Amitav Ghosh. Okay. Research skills. Whenever we think of research, any kind of research, we think of research skills, we think of methods, and we think of methodology. I mean, through all these stages, the stages that I've taken you through, after you're finally settled on the what of your research, the next question is how. How? The minute you think of the how question, you're basically thinking about the question of method, the method that you will follow, the method that you will adopt or employ in your research project. And the slide that you see, the title, Research Methods for English Studies, it's an excellent, I strongly recommend this book, where Gabrielle Griffin proposes she makes things very clear. She proposes a distinction between research skills, methods, and methodology. Skills, according to her, are simply techniques for handling your material, your sources, whether it is your primary text or your secondary sources. But at the same time, skills are also, they include, for example, your library skills, your editorial skills, your bibliographical skills, your dissertation skills, your IT skills, etc. So research, however, research method is different from research skill, because methods relate to how you will carry out your research. So the choice of a research method will actually depend on the kind of research that you want to do. In India, of course, it's almost doing a close reading and explicating a text, a bunch of texts or a bunch of authors together, either invokes a comparative approach, the comparative approach as a method, or the good old close reading as a method. But there are different methods. Different research topics actually invite or demand, they necessitate a different method altogether. So the choice of your research, the choice of your theme, your subject, or your topic will depend upon also the research method that you are putting to it. Research methods, and to do that, you need to, as a researcher, you need to know what are the research methods, the various research methods that are available, for example, in the field of English studies, specifically in the field of English studies. So there are, for example, archival methods, there is a visual and discourse analysis method, there is the use of ethnographic methods or textual analysis, etc., etc. So, if I'm to use Griffin's classification of skills, methods, and methodology, one would say, if I were to think of a research topic, a paper which I title as Post-Coloniality, imagine a paper which is titled Post-Coloniality, Nationalism, and Bhadralok Identity in Contemporary Bengali Poetry in English translation. Now, once I have this as my area, or as the topic of my critical inquiry, post-colonialism, nationalism, and Bhadralok identity in contemporary Bengali poetry in English translation. Now, clearly, that would demand that I use specific methods, not just qualitative methods for analysis and explication, but also translation maybe, or comparative studies method, or translation method. So, this is therefore, one should, as a young researcher, you should have the knowledge of various research methods, because that helps you to make informed choices about the way you will go about doing the what, how you will go about doing the what of your research. Yeah. So that's the distinction between skill and method. But what is methodology? So research methods are really about how you will conduct how you will go about doing a given piece of research. Whereas methodology, friends, methodology is actually the larger, it refers to the larger theoretical frame, such as post-colonialism, feminism, postmodernism, etc. So usually as a researcher is likely to combine several tools, research tools and research methods, but methodology is likely to be one. And how do you therefore, how do you declare or how do you announce your methodology? How do you reveal your methodology? Well, here are certain examples taken randomly from research papers. Using the definition of post-colonial subaltern cosmopolitanism given by Dipesh Chakraborty, I will argue that the Jatra, form of local theatre, is etc. etc. I'm giving you just the template. The papers here. These are lengthy papers, some of them written by me, but I'm giving you examples from my own personal research as a kind of a template. I mean, these are just examples. These are just examples, these are not exclusive. These are not exclusive methods. You can choose to do it in your own way, but I'm giving you certain specific examples. So the minute I say, for example, my paper attempts to demonstrate that pandemic narratives in films such as Contagion and Outbreak may be read as border-crossing narratives of traveling bodies and migrating microbes. I mean, here is, I think, a good beginning to a research paper. Why? Because in one go, I'm stating my thesis, my argument, and I'm also giving to the reader, I'm signposting for the reader my methodology, the frame that I will use, the theoretical framework. And what will be my theoretical framework? Well, migration theories or border crossing theories, border theories. So this is the way in which you make, you make your research topic or your research paper focused, exciting, interesting, and reader friendly. Right. I finally come to, another very important part of research, of your research paper, because, this I feel is sometimes is not paid enough attention. Catchy title. Does your title tell or yell? Look at the first one. A language acquisition through social media discussions, potential of semantic network representations, and effect of conceptual facilitation restrictiveness. Man, even before you come to the end of the title, I mean, you probably are letting out a big yawn. What is wrong with this title? It's just a bunch of compound nouns put together. There's no verb here, isn't it? And I'm sure that you, like me, would be completely cheesed off reading a title such as this. So what possibly could be a better title? I won't say the best title. Something that Professor Bandal, when he said that, when he mentioned my bio, he talked about some of my areas that I've worked with. So it's personally, what I'm just sharing with you what works for me when I'm thinking of doing a research paper, or even giving a talk such as this. I remember how I titled my talk. Are you a paper tiger? So you will notice that I have this sort of working my title with in two parts, separating the main title, the first part of the title, with a colon, and this works for me. It sort of works for me because in each of these titles I follow a particular template. So the first part, for example, when Jane Austen meets Twitter, I feel it's it sort of evokes, it piques the reader's curiosity. And then after the colon is followed by a more descriptive subtitle, one that sort of tells what the paper really is all about. So this works for me, and it's been something that has become a habit over the years as a researcher. And as somebody who's published research, my own research papers in a lot of places. So the basic thing is that the title of your research paper should be informative, should be focused. I mean, it should indicate your problem, and it should also, it should give, generally, it should also give an idea to the reader about your approach, which means the theoretical lens that you propose to use. Okay. At one, why titles of research papers or research theses are important is we must remember that all, just to repeat what I had said earlier, that all research writing has to be reader-centric. No one is under any obligation to read your paper, but as a researcher yourself. I mean, if the readers don't find your paper interesting, if they don't find it pleasurable to read, well, why should they read? So every word that you write, every word that you include in your title must be clearly understood, and it must be an attention grabber. Therefore, it is important to have a good title to your paper or for your paper or your thesis, because it will ensure that your writing style also is emphatic and concise. And there's a second and equally important reason why researchers should pay attention to the titles of their papers. Internet searches, internet research databases store thousands of papers on the same subject, on the same subject that you probably are working or writing or have written a research paper. And so browsers looking for a paper may read hundreds of titles before they select an abstract to read. When you give a catchy title to your paper, it increases the chances of your paper catching the eye of other researchers, and thereby it enables you to multiply the citation of your paper. So every word in your title, therefore, is very, very important. Right. So what key skills are needed when writing a title? I don't have to explain this. If these are self-explanatory, maybe you can just go through the bullet points that I've given on the slide. How are we doing? I'll take another 5 minutes and wrap it up.
Yes, sir.
It's more than there is so much that you can do in 90 minutes, and I think I've already extended the session. And there should be a research fatigue or a paper fatigue or a talk fatigue setting in, because you have another session coming up. So ending your paper, friends, ending your paper is equally important. To begin well is important, to end well is important, because after all, when you are writing a research paper, you are actually doing storytelling. You should be able to generate the interest and the curiosity of your reader in a way in which all storytellers do. So ending your paper is, personally, I feel I find it the most difficult part. Personally, I feel it's the most difficult part when I do my research. And but I feel that, like Tolstoy's definition of unhappy families, happy families and unhappy families, I feel endings like unhappy families should be like unhappy families. Each ending should end in its own particular way. So like I said, personally, I find endings to be the most difficult ones to write. But there are two possible ways of end. A common, shall I say, a common and an uncommon way. What is the common way? An example from my own paper. Well, I say this is a very common way. This is a paper that I wrote on gated communities. Gated communities, CCTV, surveillance of gated communities, and the notion of citizenship. Without going into the details, notice, I want you to pay attention to the structure of the conclusion. My last para, the para of the paper, I ended the paper in this manner, saying that, let me reiterate the two main contentions of my paper. So this is like summing up the essay, actually restating the two central arguments that I had made in the body of the paper. So first and second. this is a very neat way of concluding your paper. You're sort of reminding, you're repeating your argument so that the reader of your paper, there is a repeat value, and the reader knows that, well, this is really the crux of the matter in the paper. This was the gist of your argument. So this is the rather common way of concluding a paper. But there is another way, and an uncommon way of ending your paper. An uncommon way where the ending is not an ending, but in fact points to another beginning, where your conclusion is not really the end, but it points to the beginning. And this, I felt, is something that I've taken from a very famous paper. I'm sure some of you probably would have read it. I teach it in my culture studies. I teach this essay, which was first presented as a research paper by Donna Haraway, entitled A Cyborg Manifesto, Science, Technology, and Socialist Feminism in the Late 20th Century. And look at the way in which this she ends her paper. She says, perhaps ironically, we can learn from our fusion with animals and machines how not to be man, the embodiment of Western logos. From the point of view of pleasure in these potent and taboo fusions made inevitable by the social relations of science and technology, there might indeed be a feminist science. This is not restating an argument that she had made earlier. This is a pointing forward. This is a going forwards. This is looking at the possibilities that her arguments suggest. The possibilities the arguments she makes in her paper suggest to a future in feminism, where increasingly, as many of you who have read the essay by Donna Haraway would know, that she is the one who made the concept, the term cyborg, so much a part of our cultural vocabulary. So she's pointing there might indeed be a feminist science. So this is a future-looking paper. This is a paper which doesn't put a full stop to the argument, to the thesis that she presents in the paper, but looks at possibilities, probabilities. So this is what I call, a paper with not with an ending, but not just with an ending, but where the ending is a beginning. And all right. So, as we draw to a very long talk that I've given so far, I'd leave you with what I started out with. What does it take? What does it take to be an academic writer? What does it take to be you're not reading only for academic, but also for non-academic work? In other words, reading anything that you find interesting, because it broadens your perception and it improves your style. You collect along the way. The more you read, the more diversified your reading. You collect along the way interesting words, interesting syntax, and interesting ways of putting forth your ideas in very uncommon or interesting ways. So once you've been, the fact is that once you have been writing for long enough, you will know that you can't really fall. Your fundamental skills will always cushion, even if not all our papers are good. We know that. In our own hearts, we know. But it will at least give you the question. Having a grasp of the fundamental skills will always cushion your fall. Even when you can't come up, you know that you haven't come up with a good paper. Writing and reading enough will give you the confidence that if you have published where there is quality, you will continue to be able to write and publish quality papers. And you will have reason enough to believe that research is not Google research. That research is not Google research. Research is not Control-C plus Control-V research. You will have truly made your research a wonderfully satisfying search for new ideas and new frontiers of knowledge. So I think I've spoken long enough. Thank you so much. And, if there are any questions or any comments or remarks, I'll gladly lend my ears.
Thank you, sir. Thank you very much. Giving very nice presentation. I think there is no question because the session is wonderful session, sir. Thank you, sir. Thank you. Thank you very much. May I request to our colleague, Dr. Ajay Deshmukh, to express vote of thanks. Dr. Ajay, please. Dr. Ajay Deshmukh, please. Dr. Ajay Deshmukh, please.
Yes, I am here.
Yeah, okay. Thank you.
Good afternoon, all. It was a mesmerizing experience that we carefully listened to Dr. Prantik Banerjee. Congratulations, sir, for your wonderful presentation.
Thank you.
Yeah. What I appreciate about this presentation, obviously, sir, your voice quality, that was really wonderful. I relished your voice. And the way you scholarly elaborated from the beginning of your presentation, you put your argument to Umberto Eco's how to write a thesis. And that was the best initiation that can have in a lecture like on research writing and thesis writing. You explored various issues also, the dilemmas of a researcher through the citation of Wallace Stevens' 13 Minds, and the way we all are always, in a dilemma, always having so many minds working on a particular paper. You also talked about honesty in research and how one should be very passionate and committed in the research area that we are dealing with. You also talked about the topic how to select that and the way we have to put our research problem and what should be the purpose of review of literature and how we should come to the conclusion, the zero state, what it is not there. And then how we can initiate our own research so that we can contribute into that particular genre or in that jargon of research work. You also talked about the medical humanities, and I really appreciate the way you have worked throughout your life on this medical humanities and illness narratives, being your specialization area. And you talked of illness memoirs and testimonial narratives also. The focus, the way you focused on what is good at the same time, the criteria for good research and research methods in English studies. You talked about that also, the difference between method and methodology and approaches. You talked about title, how to title the paper or thesis so that it can reflect, it can mirror what exactly it is there. The last but not the least, you also, in a very humorous way, you talked about the skills and how to end the paper. And the last one, that uncommon conclusion that you cited Donna Haraway and her Cyborg Manifesto. What I liked most, the last slide, that let them be a doctorate or delete. Because as an examiner, that is the only conclusion when we examine a particular thesis. We have to look into the efforts that particular man has put into, the person has put into as a research scholar, and then we write that he may be awarded or she may be awarded. So that was, cream, pie on the cream. Really wonderful experience, sir, to listen to you. We have heard about you, and I have also listened to your lectures during one of the FDPs. And the first time we are having face-to-face conversation, you have made this session a charming one and added grace, added value to this research methodology workshop. Thank you. Thank you word is not enough. We'd like to be in your debt throughout being in touch with you. And formally, I put word of thanks for you for accepting our invitation and delivering such a wonderful lecture. I also put on record my heartfelt thanks to all the participants for making this session brilliant one. Throughout the time they were engaged in listening very carefully to Dr. Prantik Banerjee. I also put on the record my heartfelt thanks towards our Honorable Principal, Dr. Madhusudan Sarnaik sir, for providing this opportunity and always looking into the affairs of quality enhancement in the college campus. I put on the record the thanks to the executive, all the members of the Executive Council of MSP Mandal Aurangabad and all the CDC members of Shri Muktanand College, Gangapur, for encouraging the quality culture in all the colleges, particularly in Shri Muktanand College, Gangapur, Aurangabad. Last but not the least, I would like to thank my head of the department, Dr. Vijay Kumar Bandal, for his elderly presence always in all activities. My colleague, Dr. Vishwambar Chauhan, and Ms. Prajakta Parkhe for making this session a successful one from technical point of view. And though it is not officially, I would like to thank Mr. Rushikesh Bandal for hosting this Google Meet from Pune and helping us giving his due in this research workshop. If I forgot anybody, I beg pardon to all. I once again extend the vote of thanks who have helped us directly or indirectly to make this session successful. Thank you. Over to you, Bandal sir.
Thank you. Thank you. I would like to request to Ajay Deshmukh to please introduce our next resource person, Dr. Nagraj Nawa from Karnataka.
Thank you, sir. Thank you. It's great pleasure, dear all, to introduce one of wonderful friend of mine, one of a close friend of mine, Dr. Nagraj Nawa. And I still cherish the moments when he had been to our college in an offline seminar the way back in 2011, 29th and 30th December 2011, and he talked about history, politics and nation. And it was a multidisciplinary seminar and Nagraj was there for delivering his plenary session. So welcome Nagraj once again. Having you on this online podium is a great pleasure and pride for me as a friend and as a colleague.
Okay, thank you very much.
Inviting and introducing friend is rather risky and tricky job because we love friends blindly. But let me put it on the record that Nagraj has really devoted his career for the enhancement of students in his campus and of the campus also. Because whenever we talk about, he is always busy in placements of his students. He is busy in engagement of his lectures, his research work, and many of his books are published by Routledge, which is a prestigious and what we can say, well-known publication house. Dr. Nagraj Nawa is currently working as Assistant Professor of English in the Department of English, University of Horticultural Sciences, Bagalkot, Karnataka. He has completed his degrees from Dharwad University, and he worked there in Karnataka Educational Board's First Grade College, Dharwad, from 2005 to 2008 as a lecturer. Later on, he served his services as assistant professor in JSS College, Dharwad, from 2008 to 2015. Right now, he is gracing the Department of English in the University of Horticultural Sciences, Bagalkot, from July 2nd to 2015 till now. He is there. He is working as a senior assistant professor and officer of placement cell. He has many national and international seminars to his credit as a resource person He has presented more than 43 articles in various seminars. In books, there are 27 and proceedings 17. He has edited 4 books, as I have told before, that these were published by Vital and then Adi Publication and other like Routledge also. What is there? Because it is very difficult to put his whole biodata in short span of time. He has authored 4 books, then he has edited 14 books. So almost he is, connected with many publication houses and a network of scholars he has developed. And he has 4 projects to his credit, minor and major research projects. He is also acting as a board of editors for 6 journals. He is external member of Board of Studies for KL ES RLS College, Belgavi, right? And as he is engaged and busy with so many activities in academia, let me invite, without any hesitation and without any delay, Dr. Nagraj for his scholarly lecture on academic writing.
Thank you.
Nagraj,
Thank
sir,
you very
please.
much. Thank you. Am I audible to you all?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Right. Good afternoon, everyone. I thank that's Ajay Deshmukh, Vijay Kumar Bandal sir, and the principal sir of the college for giving me this opportunity over here to be with you on the topic that's about academic writing. In few minutes, I'm going to share, sir.
Yes.
First, I just begin with on a project itself, so that I can just make you to understand that's about what exactly the academic writing needs and why that's about there is that's about fall in academic writing, right? Just a minute. I hope this presentation is clear.
Yes,
sir. Okay.
Yes.
Now that's about. I don't want to begin with any kind of a definition or the other. I just want to switch on. That's about what exactly there is a need of academic writing, a proper academic writing over here. Now, basically, the thing is that that's about we are Indians. That's about we. That's about we have our mother tongue. We get educated in English language. The problem is that that's about we don't know English properly. English is that's about a second language to us, right? Either we speak Marathi, Konkani, or Kannada, or any other language over here at home. The problem is that when we try to express our thoughts, the first thing is that we think in our mother tongue, either in Marathi or Kannada, right? We will be thinking that when we try to express that in English, right, it won't be a proper, there will be no proper framework. So this proper framework makes us that's about totally diluted from the other, right? And we fail over here. And the other side, that's about teachers or the other who know that's about proper English, right? Who have a knowledge in English, right? Can or may be able to guide in a very proper manner, right? Many of them have faced a problem in writing the thesis. The problem is that in writing thesis is that they cannot organize the thesis properly. They cannot construct the paragraph properly. There are many things which they face. There are some things which I have noted down over here, which I had seen in our university PhD thesis, which are over here, which I'm just trying to show to you all. One is that's about over here, these students, although they come from a science background, so the problem is over there that's about they face over there how to, that's about construct a paragraph. There is construction of sentence is okay. Now that's about paragraph, linking to one para to another. This is the problem which they face. Okay. So how to overcome this? That means in every paragraph, we have to, that's about one idea, right? That idea is to be sifted towards a thought. And then one thought has to, move in a very proper framework towards the another. Like that, we have to make some kind of a plan. One after the another, that's about when we make a plan of that's about idea, right? What I have to draft. So slowly I will going to construct that's about a paragraph in that's about sequence manner. That's about what I have to say in this para, what I have to say in next para, right? What will happen? That's about there should not be more than that's about two ideas in one paragraph. Only one idea. Then it would be better. That's about a person to understand that what a person is going to write. Now moving towards next. Just come to the slides later, just making you to understand. Right over here, in regard to this, that's about in tense, right? Especially when it comes for tense pattern, many of them they won't stick on towards what kind of tenses they have to use, right? For example, in introduction, that's about they are supposed to use that's about mostly the present tense, right? What they have to that's about the plan up and the other things. A review of literature, right? When you are reviewing the literature, that's about you have to sift towards the past tense itself. Observation and findings, you have to stick on towards the present tense itself. And then summary and conclusion, that should be in past tense or else in present perfect tense. Now, why I'm saying this to you all, that's about, or here, many of us, we write thesis, right? We won't bother that's about what we have written. We won't bother what we have written, how we have written. Now, thing is that there is a kind of an expression, right, which we have to follow, right? So the thing is that when we express, as I told you, that's about we come from a that's about our mother tongue is different. Then we are that's about writing this thesis in English, right? That's about a subject which is totally alien to us, right? The problem which we face over here is that's about we only know that what we are doing a mistake. Now that's about we have to understand what exactly the mistake which we are doing is that we have to stick on some rules. That sticking on some rules is that's about how to present it. How to present it in the sense now first that's about structure is over now. Now next is that's about tense. In what tense I'm saying, right? For example, if I say in that's about in past tense, especially in introduction, right? The meaning will be distorted. So I have to stick on towards a kind of a meaning, right? Wherein that's about I have to explain the thought clearly over there. That's about I have to speak over there in the present tense, expressing it, right? So that I can frame up in a very proper, right? In a very proper manner. Many of them, now moving towards next thought. It's not here. I just explain it later to you. Many of them, that's about they use very conclusive words. Conclusive words in the sense that's about coming towards that's about so, hence, therefore. They again and again use over there without any sequencing manner. Or else they just say that's about for everything they will say so. So it's right. It so happens that's about a person is unable to write a proper framework in a very proper framework. Here again he misses over there in writing. Right now, I just come to the exact slide which I have to tell to you all. Now, after making that's about the project, making you to understand about the what are the mistakes done by that's about our students over there in the university, and then presenting this, you can able to understand. Now that's about research is nothing but it's a formal writing. We have to write in a very formalistic manner, right? Why we have to write in a very formalistic manner in the sense that's about these are being likely to be read by others. It shows that's about whether I've been able to that's about have that scholarship or not, right? If I write in colloquial language, slang or cliche or the other kind of a one, right? Many of them won't like my scholarship, right? They expect me that's about I am a PhD. That's about I'm a PhD student, or I have completed a PhD. I have completed doctorate in literature or something like this, right? Many of them expect that's about whether I have that technical knowledge or not. Many of them expect. So when I write, that's about a thesis, right? Remember, dissertation is for MPhil, thesis is for PhD, right? So over here, you have to, that's about write in such a framework, that's about many of them have to understand that you have a great scholarship, right? Or else what will happen, that's about many of them will discard you because you are unable to write properly. Now, which I just told you, the basic thing is that paragraph, tenses, and then that's about conclusive. And another thing which I have just forgotten to tell, that's about while writing, avoid using personal pronoun, I. These are to be avoided because it is not I, right? You can just tell this I in a different framework, which I just let you know later. Now, I just tell you, right in the next slide itself, what is the difference between from academic and non-academic writing. Now, in academic writing, what happens? I use over there the formal language, right? And there will be some technical vocabulary which I'm going to use. On the other side, there will be some non-academic, that's about writing, that's about essay or the other, wherein I use very simple language, very simplistic language, right? And over there, I can use informal phrases, slangs or the other. Informal phrases or slangs or the other in the sense that's about, I can use that's about anything as I feel so. But over there in academic writing, you cannot use anything as you feel so. Right, you have to use a very that's about a straightforward language, right? Making other person to understand what you are going to say, right? It's not like that's about totally telling a story, right? You have to tell everything in a very diplomatic manner, explaining everything, what all these things are, why you have taken this, why that's about what is the reason behind to take this subject, and what you want to explain from this. Right? This is what I just cut short, not to take much examples, right? Another thing which you have to remember is that's about you have to make a kind of a introductory paragraph, formal introductory paragraph containing statements, right? Statements in the sense it's about making you to explain over there what you want to tell, what you want to say. But on the other side, in non-academic writing, what will happen? There will be short introduction, right? Suiting on the thesis matter of the work, there will be short introduction, right? Over here, on the other side, in academic writing, body paragraph are long, with each sentence serving a specified purpose, right? On the other side, that's about, you can just come over there, I just skip to some of them. Right? You have to argue in a very proper framework. In academic writing, you have to argue why that's about you are taking this idea or this topic, and what is the reason behind of taking that topic, right? That's about, and making a conclusive statement for that, right? Why this has happened. I think that's about earlier, that's about Pratik Banerjee had said about this, right? While explaining that, that's about, right, in regard about war writing, right? There was no female writer earlier. That's about that was what he said. On the other side, now moving towards next, that's about right other ideas and answers incorporated to a body paragraph as directed in quotation and paragraph. Now remember over there, whenever we are writing it, that's about thesis or any kind of a article or the other, there that's about we have to use over there, that's about in quotation, that's about directly citing from the sources, right? We directly cite from the sources. But over there in non-academic writing, we never bothered over there, that's about citing from these sources, right? If this happens, that will lead to plagiarism, intellectual theft. If we have to do over there, that's about everything, whatever we have quoted, we have to mention that's about all the details from where we have taken it. Now, this is what I have to tell you about academic writing and non-academic writing. Now, moving towards the major part, that's about of composition. Now, this is the major one, right, in almost all the writing. Now, I may take at least 20 minutes to explain this to you all. Now, over there in Modern Rhetorics, right, by Kenneth Brooks and Warren, they have just mentioned over there while writing any kind of a writing, especially in rhetorics, there are 5 modes which are to be taken. One is exposition, description, narration, argument, and proposition. Now, exposition means what? Exposition means expanding the ideas. So we have to expand our ideas by, that's about telling over the definitions, what this means, right? If you are writing, that's about a PhD thesis honestly by yourself, you will face a problem that's about how to write, how to begin, right? You can construct your own thoughts by understanding this, that's about the proper rhetorics over there. So exposition means that's about expanding the ideas, definitions, right? And then that's about some kind of analogs will come, right? Those things are to be used over there. Exposition, that means expanding the ideas and thoughts. Description. So here, describing it, how you describe. Now, in describing it, left to you, how you describe, in a simple or in a complex method. If you describe in a simple method, it is understood. If you describe in a complex method, then it leads to some kind of a problem. Again, narration. There is in narration, we have induction method, deduction method, right? And then that's about the third one, which has been used by the journalistic writers, right? Argument, right? In argument, what happens over there, that's about, I'm sorry. In argument, what happens, how you argue, right? Sorry, its argument is based on inductive method and deductive method. Narration, that's about first person narration and third person narration which we use. Proposition means that's about the stand which we take, that's about, if we take on a good side, that's about people will accept it, right? On the argument. I just explained to you slowly, one by one, what exactly these all stands for. Now, think that it's about exposition. In exposition, if you have an exposition concept in your mind, so how to begin it, right? Now, thing is that you have to take over there, that's about think one topic you have in your mind, that's about spectacles. Now, over here, you will define about spectacles. You define about spectacle. What are the uses of spectacles, right? What are the, that's about demerits of spectacles, right? Like that, you are, that's about making the things, right? Constructing the ideas. And then coming towards next one, that's about, right? What, that's about, what is its nature, right? Spectacle's nature, right? You will begin to explain these thoughts one after the another by making over there a proper constructive ideas. Now, description, as I said, over here in description, right? You are describing the concepts. You are describing the concepts over here with, in a very simpler manner, right? In a simplistic way, if you take over there, for example, spectacles, a topic in regard to the spectacles, right? Describing it. So how do you describe it? You describe that's about over there saying that's about, it is very beautiful, right? I just take in a very simple manner. It is very beautiful. Now that's about, someone comes over there, that's about uses over there in a very different manner, right? In a very complex manner, right? So spectacle is something kind of a vision, right, which can surpass, right, other person's idea. Or here it turns out to be a different, that's about figures of speech. Or here, if we change on, that's about shifting on towards a different figures of speech, there will be a problematic in understanding. Okay, narration, right? Narration in writing, right? I just come back to academic writing a bit later, right? So in narration in writing, that's about first person and third person, right? I think many of you know that first person writing and third person writing. But in academic writing, I cannot use over there that's about first person writing over there. If I use a first person point of view, I can use only in the introduction part. I can use only in the introductory part, all right? Where I can have to tell over there that's about why I have taken this topic, what is the reason behind to take this topic, what exactly I want to tell over here, and how that's about I'm going to write these chapters. Only in that part you are going to use that's about the first person narration. And then coming towards in the conclusion, again you can use over there about what all you have done. But only in regard to this in academic writing, especially the narration can be used over there, right, for that particular purpose, right? Now moving towards argument, right? In regard to argument over there, the stand which you take, arguing, like in debate you might have seen, that's about there will be for and against. There will be for and against. In for, that's about how the person is arguing over there. I'm for this, right? I'm against to this, right? Over there, that's about maybe that's about. I just take a simple topic, making you to understand. Is Pune a beautiful city? One person may explain over there with saying that it's a beautiful. The another person may use that's about saying that's about no. Or here, in this kind of one, right? One may be arguing over there in the better, the another may be arguing over there as not. But simple thing is that that's about if we go on a better side, which is acceptable, like for example, in a very simple manner, just take that's about another. Is IPL a good? Is IPL a good? So many of them say that's about IPL is good. Is IPL bad? So many of them say that's about bad also, because there are two kinds of a thing, right? So which one we take? IPL is good, it will be induction method. IPL is bad, again it would be a deduction method, right? But argument which we give, and if it is accepted by that's about others, that's about where you have argued, where you have given the reason one after the another, that would be a better way, right? So we have to make this argument, making the others to understand why I am taking this kind of a judgment over there, right? And last but least, that's about proposition. Now, proposition over here, the stand which I take, right? Proposition means that stand which I'm taking, that's about for good side or bad side. Now, thing is that always a proposition which I take over there, that's about is to be justifiable by me, right? Remember, always true wins. Always the thing is that true is likely to win. Whether it is good or bad, the true is likely to be win. So here, the proposition, the stand which I have taken, right? If it is true to yourself, true to your argument, then you are likely to proceed over there in a very better manner. Over here, I just come back, which I just didn't explain in a very, that's about in regard about exposition and description in an academic mode. So here in exposition, right, especially in academic writings, so what I have to do over there, that's about, firstly, that's about in exposition, what first thing is that definition. So when you start anything, for example, you have a topic in your mind, something over there, myth in Indian literature. Something is there in your mind that is myth in Indian literature. So here you have to define what the topic is, right? What the topic is. Defining over there slowly in 1 to 2 paras or 3 paras. Remember, when you are writing article, it will be 2 paras. When you are writing over the thesis, you have to tell in a nearly about at least nearly about 6 to 7 pages of making over there your concept understandable to the other. Okay, that is defining over there, that is exposition. Or else if we won't that's about follow a method of exposition, what will happen, we our thoughts will not get expanded. Exposition means expanding of thoughts one after the another. That's about thoughts are to be built, like how we build, that's about a kind of a building. Like that, exposition is needed for building the thoughts, how you are building up, right over there with your thought construction, expanding your that's about holistic ideas, right, on cause or on a reason basis. Cause or a reason basis. Description is nothing but it's an illustration, right? You are just explaining it more. For example, in academic writing, what we do, we have selected about some 6 to 8 novels or drama or the other for our writing. So there what we do, that's about, we cannot explain what happened in 1 or 2 sentences. There we try to tell over there what all happened in regard to that particular concept, expanding our thoughts, right? Telling over there the gist of that story, in regard to that concept, right? And making the other person understand what all the things which I have to tell, right? Putting that in a very illustrative manner, making the other person understand what I try to explain over there, right? That turns out to be description. Now, narration, which I have told you, the narrative technique, which I have to use over there in the first para, or sorry, in the first, that means in the first chapter, that means introduction, and in conclusion. I have to use over there some kind of thoughts construction, that what I'm going to do, what I'm going to, how I'm going to draft the thesis, or how I'm making to explain that's about these things in that thesis. And argument, as I told you, that's about the methods which you have to follow. Remember, inductive method is more better. Inductive method is more better, and many of them have accepted. Right? Deductive method is that's about, it's okay, but you have to that's about argue a lot. You have to argue a lot. You have to explain a lot. You have to make a justifiable reason for that, making the other person to understand. Now moving to its next slide. Now here, steps, and that means step process of writing an academic assignment or the other. Now, first thing is that whenever, right, Pratik Banerjee sir had already told about these things, right? I'm just trying to just try to make over there that's about something. I'm just adding over there, right? He has already told, but I'm just trying to add over there. That's it. The first thing is that whenever you have a that's about a topic over there, right, or the other. Now, first thing is that you come and discuss over there with your teacher, right? I think the great teachers like A.G. Khan, Hamid Khan sir, right? Over there, that's about Basuraj Naikar, M.K. Naik sir, right? These all have guided their students in a very better manner, right? So it's better to come and discuss with your best teachers, right? Sir, I want that topic. What are the ideas which I have to write over there, or what are the things? Now, before writing anything in regard that's about the thesis, the thing is that that's about, first you must have ample material in front of you, right? And second thing is that a scholarly suggestion from your teachers, a scholarly suggestion from your teachers. And thirdly, that's about scholarly friends, right, whom you can trust, whom you can share some kind of a thoughts, right? Because sometimes what happens, your thoughts cannot be shared. Your thoughts have been shared by your friends and they have been published. This is likely to happen, right? There's some kind of a friends whom you can trust, and you can just that's about get a scholarly suggestion from them. Over here, it runs with the three kinds of a mode. That means one is pre-writing, writing, and revising. Right. So pre-writing, in the sense that's about, in pre-writing stage, that's about we have to go through, that's about the material. That means primary material, secondary material, tertiary material, which we have before writing, understanding it, right? And one fine day, that's about you sit, after reading all this, you sit together, right? Right, by taking your plan, you're chalk outing your plan, that's about how you have to do, and then start writing over there. After writing, give it to your teacher or guide or the other, who will likely to suggest you that what mistakes you have done. Then you go for revising it. So after revising it, you will come to know that what is better, right? Same thing can be done over there in regard to that's about any kind of a research piece, right? It may be thesis, it may be that's about an article, right? Or any kind of a review which you have done over there on that's about poetry collection or on a drama. Now over here, decide on what you want to study. First thing is that because many of them, that's about they won't have any kind of a notion, right? So what you want to do, that's about if someone asks, that's about I want to do a PhD. Okay, so he may say like this, right? After that's about thinking about this, right? He just end with, sir, I want to do a PhD on drama, right? Drama, which he doesn't know about the topic or the other. So here, what I have to tell you, that's about first, whenever you are going to do any kind of a research, you have a topic with a thorough research, right? As a student, that's about during MA days, that's about you have read only that's about few things. You have read only few things. You won't have ample knowledge. But after, when you come for teaching for nearly about 3 to 4 years, you begin to come over there that's about something different over there in that particular writer. He has some kind of a value. He has some kind of a concept, right? He writes only in this particular genre. He writes over there only on that issue. Or here, slowly you will begin to understand over there that's about one writer is writing on that particular aspect. So now you are able to understand over there that's about some writers have been focusing on that particular issue. So slowly you think that's about you are able to do a justice and you are able to do a better way, right? At that time, you just decide a topic. Now you have a topic in your mind. You're going to write a research paper or you're going to do a PhD on that. That's about so the concept is very much clear to you. So next thing is that when the concept is clear, just discuss this with your friends or else the teacher, which I just say that's about there were great teachers. Even now, that's about in few universities and colleges, there are teachers who are guiding the students, right? Helping them, making them to understand what exactly these are, right? And then slowly that's about you have to build up over there. That's about a kind of information collecting over there from the other sources. That's about from the nowadays that's about Googling information is okay. You will get almost all the information, but over there is no proper guidance over there given by any kind of a Google or Google Scholar to you. Now moving towards next. Now, after that's about doing this, selecting a topic, now getting a bibliography or the everything or the other. Now you sit and finalize how you have to, that's about start your writing. Finalizing in the sense that's about, it's not A, B, C, A, B, C. It's not on that basis. What you want to do, construct your, that's about a framework in such a manner that nothing goes beyond that. Right? Sometimes, and after studying deeply, you begin to feel over there that's about, I had missed this point, I had missed that point. So you can do it in while revising it, right? That can be done. Or here, initial level, you can do this. Now moving towards next, that's about when you start drafting, right? When you start writing over there, write it first. Next thing is that's about which you have to do over there. That's about concentrate on structural and thematic. That's about aspect. If there is no structural and thematic, that's about, if there are some kind of inconsistency, editing, revising, these are all to be done. First thing is that you draft it slowly, write over there, then you read it, understand it, then make a correction of that language error or some kind of mistakes which you have done, you prepare for that. And at last you come over there, that's about, as you have a plan, right? Think it is as per your plan or not. If it is not as per your plan, revise it. Okay? And then try to give, that's about a final draft to your teacher or the other who can able to understand what exactly this is. Right? So these are some of the steps in writing. Right? Initially, when you have to write over there, because framing up your thoughts, making a structure, it takes, that's about ample time, because you might have heard a saying over there of 3 sayings, right, in the world, that 2 are known to you. That means never ask, that's about age of a girl, never ask over there the salary of, that's about a man, and never ask a PhD scholar when he is going to complete it. So if you say that's about, I'm going to complete it in next month, so next month it won't be. So like that, that's about, he will be in thinking, that's about when to complete it. So all the thoughts are there, but over there, when it comes for drafting part, writing, it takes more time. So now, last but least, what we have to do and what are the things which we should have to stick on, and what are the things which we should not write over there. So here, especially in academic writing, we have to avoid using colloquial language, slang, jargon, cliches. For example, if we use over there these kinds of one, right, these will be a problematic. Especially these things will be a problematic. Jargon means that's about a professional language used by professionals, right? Right. Slang is a O-not one, right? We cannot use colloquial language. That's about some of them. That's about, they try to use in a very local language as newspaper, right? Some of the newspaper they use in a very colloquial language, because they won't find that's about a proper word in English. For example, there is a proper bandobast. They use this word, right? Newspaper people, that's about the reporter, they use the word proper bandobast, a headline. Right? This looks like a very colloquial language, right? These are to be avoided. Don't use contradiction. That means contradictory statement over there. If we use a contradictory statement, right, there, that's about a question mark comes over there in your thesis or in your article, contradictory. So observe over there, that's about, there should not be any kind of a contradiction while writing over there. So avoid using passive voice. Many of them, in regard to avoid plagiarism, they use passive voice. If they use passive voice over there, that's about sometimes in some sentences, there that's about that's about, there are some intransitive verbs are there. Even those have been transformed by some of the that's about writers, right? Like article writers or PhD writer. That means in regard to the academy. So in order to avoid that's about plagiarism, they use passive voice. So this should be avoided. It's better to use active voice. Straightforward. Be straightforward. Avoid using flowery language. If you use flowery language, as I said over there, in a description part, if you use flowery language, then your language will come down. So it's better to use a very simple language so that others can understand what exactly this is. Simple in the sense, simple formal language, not simplistic language. And don't use first person. First person in the sense, that's about, it should be used only in introduction and conclusion part, not in between. If you are explaining in regard next chapter, I will speak about this you can use over there, but all right, not for other purpose. Now here, you have to be very precise in your language. You have to be very precise in your language and effective words. That means when you use that's about your language in a very precise manner, that means limited words, effective ones, then others are able to understand it, right? Sometimes what happens, it's about if you use a lengthy sentence, right? Some of them, they try to use clauses after clauses, and the sentence gets over, right, after writing 10 lines. Sentence gets over after writing 10 lines. Over there, that's about what will happen. The person is unable to understand what he had written. He himself won't understand. And another thing is that we have to vary the sentence structure. We should not follow very short sentence, very long sentence. We have to vary the sentence structure. Sentence sections are to be varied in a very appropriate manner, as if that's about, it's a game of writing. It's a game of writing wherein you have to understand that this I had used, that I should not use over there. Next, that's about present your argument in a very fairly manner. Fairly manner in the sense that's about whatever you're arguing over there, one after the another, you have to tell over there why you have used, what is the reason behind that you have taken this concept or this topic to explain over there. And another thing is that if you have quoted from other person, use appropriate tone. Not that's about the tone should not be harsh one linking over there. So you, while your explanation look over there, that's about you are using in a very better manner, right? The tone should be in a very better manner. Another thing that's about whenever you are writing, that's about you have to use that's about proper citation. That means citation should be correct, right? You should not miss any kind of wordings over there. Citation should be there, and if you cite properly, then there will be no problem of plagiarism. Right? Many of the that's about young scholars, they won't that's about follow a proper citation, right? They won't follow a proper citation, right? References. So that's the reason they fail over there in that's about in writing their ideas and concepts. So with this, I just complete my talk. If there are any queries. Sir?
Hello?
Badal sir? Ajay? Sir?
Yeah.
Am I audible to you?
Yes, yes, sir. Yes.
All right.
You share the screen, sir. Sir?
Yes, sir.
Please share the screen. Okay, sir. Okay. Okay. Okay, sir. Please go ahead.
Right. Over, sir. I had completed.
Okay. Sir has given very nice presentation about academic writing. May I request to Mrs. Prajakta ma'am to express sincere vote of thanks. Mrs. Prajakta?
Yes, sir. Good afternoon, everyone. मराठवाडा शिक्षण प्रसारक मंडळ श्री मुक्तानंद कॉलेज Department of English organized today's one-day national workshop on academic and research writing. So I will thank Honorable Dr. Nagraj Nawa sir for delivering such a beautiful lecture based on academic writing in a very simple language. To talk about how should be a proper academic writing. Then sir has explained the definition of academic writing and also talk about What is the difference between academic and non-academic writing? Different examples. Sir also talk about the steps in academic writing. Sir, personally, I got so many important points related to the research because recently I have registered for PhD. So thank you so much, sir, for such a wonderful presentation. Then I will thanks to the principal of Shri Muktanand College, Dr. M.N. Sarnaik, sir, Vice Principal Vaishali Bagul ma'am, and D.P. Pawar, sir. Then I will thanks to the convener and the head of the English department, Dr. Bandal, sir. I will thanks to the organizing secretary, Dr. Ajay Deshmukh, sir. Then I will thanks to my colleague, Dr. Chavan, sir. And lastly, I would like to thank all teachers and participants. Thank you, sir.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Thank you very much, sir. Thank you very much.
Thank you, madam. Thank you,
Thank
sir.
you, sir.
Thank you, sir.
करायची का बंड